أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم وجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه اللهم اجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك ولا تجعل فيها حظا لغيرك وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How's everyone today? All good?
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ana بخير الحمد
وعليكم
لله.
السلام ورحمة الله.
All good, alhamdulillah. All right. We were busy in our last lesson with some sarf. Continue with that today, bismillah ta'ala. Shukran. Okay. We were busy in our last lesson with some sarf. Remember, we just in our first lessons we recapped on the work we did last week, and that was for the most part going down, what we called going down a scale. And then in our first lesson we looked at going across the scale or doing what we call the sarf saghir, uh, going across the scale. We did that for the first bab, that kind of summary for the work we did last year. Um, and then we moved on to al-mazidu fihi. And we said that al-mazidu fihi is simply means the verbs with an increase in it. What does that mean? That the basic verb form doesn't just have three root letters, rather there's an addition in the form of the, or in the standard form of the verb, there's an additional letter. Um, in going through that, the first one we had was the verb form fa'ala, fa'ala. And we said that what is increased over there is that there's a shadda on the second root letter. And so that second root letter is repeated. And last week we learned the scale. Fa'ala, fa'ala. And we said what was increased over there is that an alif was added into the verb form. So now before we get into any of that, we'll just do some revision in saying the sarf saghir. Right, so we'll take maybe two examples of scale number 1, two examples of scale number 2, and then we'll go through the homework for scale number 3, and then we'll check the questions and move on from there, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Right, so I want everybody to say the fa'ala scale with me. 1, 2, 3, go. Bismillah. Fa'ala, yaf'alu, fi'lun, fa'ilun, maf'ulun, if'al, la taf'al. Again. فعل يفعل فعل فاعل مفعول افعل لا تفعل. And let's just pick any other random one. Let's do رحمة. رحمة رحمة يرحم رحمة راحم مرحوم ارحم لا ترحم. Again. رحم يرحم رحمة راحم مرحوم ارحم لا ترحم. That one's actually the hardest because it has the least amount of like uniformity in the scale. the maf'ul, the masdar can sound different, like fi'lun and rahmatun, they're not in the same form. The ismul fa'il and the ismul maf'ul are different, or like very different, instead of just being one haraka different. Like we have rahimun and marhumun, whereas that's different in the second bab and the third bab and the other abwab, right? So let's look at the second bab. Everybody say for me the second bab, right? With the root letters fa'ala. 1, 2, 3, go. فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل مفعل فعل لا تفعل. Again, فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل مفعل فعل لا تفعل. And then let's take a different set of root letters. Let's take علم. Everyone, علم يعلم تعليما معلم معلم علم لا تعلم. Again, علم يعلم تعليما معلم معلم علم لا تعلم. And what did you say? What are the connotations of the second bab? What do we like? What connotations are often found in the meanings of the second bab? We mentioned four. What's that? I saw somebody unmute. There we have them. One, causation. Number two, intensification. Number three, same as the first bab. And four, sometimes has a new meaning. So tell me, for example, in the case of allama, what connotation is used over there? Allama. What does allama mean, firstly? Allama means to teach. That's why if you, yeah, allama means to teach, to cause someone to know, cause someone to know. So there's the meaning of causation over there. Um, I'm going to ask you some questions from that bab quickly. Tell me, how would I say then a teacher? What form would the teacher be? The word a teacher be? And how would it sound? Is it the masdar? Is it the ismul maf'ul? Is it the amr? A teacher. If allama means to teach, then how would I say a teacher?
مولانا معلم.
That's correct, yes. Muallimun. Muallimun. And which form of the which form is that?
Sheikh, it's ismul fa'il.
Ismul fa'il. Good. And how would I say student then?
المعلم.
معلم.
Like muallim. And there's other words that you use for it as well, right? Okay. And yeah, that's fine. Then we had we had examples of the other connotations or qualities of this bab of intensification, like okay, قتل was the only one that we actually had here. قتل يقتل تقتيلا مقتل مقتل قتل لا تقتل. That means to massacre. Right. Okay. Let's just do one more. Say one more of those skills with me. بشر. Everyone. بشر يبشر تبشيرا مبشر مبشر بشر لا تبشر. One more time. بشر يبشر تبشيرا مبشر مبشر بشر لا تبشر. بشر means to give good news.
Yes.
How would I say how would I say do not give good news to a group of people? How would I say do not give good news to a group of people?
لا تبشر.
Is it لا تبشرون؟
Close.
لا تبشر.
That's also very close. To a group of people, I'm saying it to a,
لا
that's for females.
تبشركم.
Sheikh,
going
isn't
further.
it لا تبشرون؟ لا
Is it لا
تبشرون.
تبشر لا تبشروا? There we go. لا تبشروا. You must identify, right? Firstly, if I say do not give good news, I'm speaking about a nahi, right? And then if you go across the scale, how do we get to the nahi? That's the last one. So it will be bashara, yubashiru, tabshiran, mubashirun, mubasharun, bashir, la tubashir. But la tubashir means do not give good news to the singular, for one person. How do I go down that scale now? Then I go لا تبشر لا تبشروا لا تبشروا. Remember, for the amr and the nahi, the noons are dropped at the end, except for the feminine plural. So it will sound لا تبشر لا تبشروا لا تبشري and لا تبشرنا. Right? Any questions on that? Sami, did we go through the answers of this Mazid Fi from the Quran? We only did 5, I think. Yeah, we only did 5. Okay, I will send you these answers. I'll send you these answers another time, inshallah. Or like in the coming week, I'll send these answers to you. I just want to look at the last 5. So let's look at from 13 for practice. What does Allah say? كذلك يبين الله آياته للناس. كذلك يبين الله آياته للناس. Now you have to look at the bold word. Tell me which bab it's from. And we all know, okay, all of those are from the second bab. But which form of the word is that from the second bab? يبين. الفعل المضارع. Okay, all the answers are on the board now. If I use this thing to cover it, can you still see?
Yes, we can, Madana.
I wanted to lie, Marina.
Yes, we can.
Okay, just see how I can cover it for you. And if I use that,
Okay, it's blocking it now, Madana.
okay. Next one. والمطلقات. والمطلقات. What do you think the verb طلق يطلق means
To release.
to release or to
Set
it
free.
also means to divorce. Yeah, to set free, also to divorce. Right? You can see the root letters here, ta, lam, ta. We use it because it comes in the Quran. وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ. So what do you think this word means? What? From which bab is it firstly? We know it's from the
Second one.
second bab. Okay, but tell me, how do you know it's from the second bab?
Sheikh, because of the shadda.
Because of the shadda, yes. Where's the shadda? The shadda on the
On the second root letter.
second root letter. Brilliant. That's how you identify that. Okay, good. Now, which form of the word is this?
Sheikh, I've got ismu fa'il.
Ismul fa'il or ismul maf'ul?
مفعول.
Maf'ul.
مفعول.
Maf'ul.
Ismul maf'ul. Why? On that second root letter, the ismul fa'il will always have a kasra. Fa'ala yufa'ilu taf'ilan mufa'ilun mufa'alun. Yeah, we have mutallaqun. At mutallaq, the ismul maf'ul will always have a fatha. So this one has a fatha, mutallah, fatha. Okay, so ismul maf'ul, and then we just found the feminine plural of that word, right? It was al-mutallaqu, and if you look at the plural of that word, or the feminine form of that, al-mutallaqatu, and then the plural of that, al-mutallaqatu. Everybody follow me there. Remember, the ismul maf'ul is an ism. And the standard form that we have in our scale is the masculine form. At al-mufa'alun or mufa'ilun, mufa'alun. It's an ism and it's the masculine form. How would I make it feminine? Mufa'alatun or mutallaqatun. And then the plural would just be mutallaqatun. And yeah, because it's definite, it becomes al-mutallaqatu. Those females that were divorced. Okay, number 15. وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ. Again, this is on the second bab. How do we know it's on the second bab? طَلَّقْتُم. There's a shadda on the second root letter. Which form of the verb is this? Or which form is it from the scale?
فعل الماضي.
الفعل الماضي. That's correct. It is the فعل الماضي. And if you go down the scale, how do we get to this one? Or rather, first time, what does it mean? What does it mean? طلقتم.
You
Is it
divorce?
you
You-
males divorce?
You, many males divorced, right? Okay. إذا طلقتم. You, many males divorced. And the full translation of that passage would be, and when you translate or when you divorce the women. Next one. وأزواج مطهرة. وأزواج مطهرة. مطهرة. We know it's from the second bab again, right? Which form of the word is this? Ism, is it? I already said ism. Ismul fa'il or ismul maf'ul?
Ismu maf'ul.
Ismul maf'ul, correct. Right? And again, it's just the feminine form. مطهرة. مطهرة. Next one. ومن المقربين. Okay, that one's easy. Again, it is going to be the ismul maf'ul. مقرة. It has a fatha on it. المقرب. So the verb is قرب يقرب تقريبا. مقرب مقرب. If we go make it plural, مقربون. and in Nasb al Jar it will be muqarrabina. Those who are brought near. And the last one, فضل الله المجاهدين بأموالهم. That's very easy. فضل, it's the اسم sorry, it's the فعل الماضي. It is the فعل الماضي, and it means to give preference. Allah gave preference to those who struggled with their wealth. Okay. Did I assign homework for you from the third bab? No. Only homework that I assigned for you here was on the other worksheet. Correct? You were to fill in these verbs over here, right? Isn't it? Jahada, qatala, hafadha, hajara. Right?
Yes, Mulana.
Okay. So let's just say some of those skills quickly from bab number 3. We said bab number 3 just had a little bit of an extra twist to it in that the masdar can be of 2 different forms, right? Fi'alan and mufa'ala. But that's not a problem. We just learn it as part of the skill. So let's go. Here we'll do all of the verbs that we did last week. Fa'ala, everybody together. Fa'ala, yufa'ilu, fi'alan, mufa'alatan, mufa'ilun, mufa'alun, fa'il, la tufa'il. Next one, jahada, jahada, yujahidu, jihadan, mujahadatan, mujahidun, mujahadun, jahid, la tujahid. And jahada means to strive. And it can also mean to fight. The next one. قاتل, يقاتل, قتالا, مقاتلة, مقاتل, مقاتل, قاتل, لا تقاتل. Next one. And that means to fight. Just have to pull up something else here. Let's put this one. That's all. Remind me, I must send you this as well. That was قاتل. Let's look at the next one. حافظ. Everybody. حافظ, يحافظ, حفاظا, محافظة, محافظ, محافظ, حافظ, لا تحافظ. It means to protect. Allah used that in the Quran. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى. We'll see that in our Quran examples. Next one. هاجر, migrate, emigrate. هاجر, يهاجر, هجارا, مهاجرة, مهاجر, مهاجر, هاجر, لا تهاجر. You can see on these answers here, we only put the one masdar, but you can form both masadir. Next one, نافق, to be a hypocrite or to show hypocrisy. نافق, ينافق, نفاقا, منافق, منافق, نافق, لا تنافق. And then did you have to do the next page as well? No, there's only one page of 3. Right. So are there any questions on just forming the bab?
Mulana, will there be a for the masters? Can you use them interchangeably, or is there specific times when you use one or the other?
Mm. You can use them interchangeably, yeah, but sometimes it's just a more common one. Uh, there's a more common one for a specific set of root letters. Like for example, the root, like if I look at the word jahada, when you're referring to like fighting in war, then usually the form jihad would be used, jihad. And when you're using it just to mean to strive, then the masdar mujahada would be used. To exert oneself is making mujahada. But for now, if you want to check that those differences, you can just check in your dictionary. All right?
Maulana, for this, all the harakat also stay the same, like scale 2.
Exactly. The harakats stay exactly the same. Right? And that applies now to all the different verbs that we're going to do. From number 2 till number 10, the harakats all stay the same. Right? Okay. So now what I want you to do for homework, there's no more questions, is you have that that PDF al-Mazid Feehi from the Quran, right? You have a PDF al-Mazid Feehi from the Quran. I would like you to do the page that's titled al-Mazid Feehi from the Quran, form 3. It's page number 2 in that document. Starts with عاهدوا عهدا وقاتلوا في سبيل الله الذين يقاتلونكم. So you fill in the bab, the naw again, naw meaning which word in the scale is it? Is it the maldi? Is it al-fi'l al-maldi? Is it the masdar? Is it the amar? Is it the nahi? Whatever. You fill that in by naw, and then you give me a translation of the sentence. And just to remind you, the connotation of the third bab is usually it either has its own new meaning or its mutuality. Mutuality is a very common, the most common connotation in that third bab, where it's an action that, where it takes two to tango, two people are partaking in the action.
Mulana, can you just give us maybe choose one of them from the exercise to translate it, to give to how for us to be able to translate it to give the meaning of mutuality.
Um, okay,
Especially with the
qatala
translation.
would be a good example. So qatala, they mutually try to kill each other.
So in translating, you should bring that.
No, look, that's the understanding that's conveyed. I mean, that will simply translate to they fought.
Okay, but the understanding is two
But
people.
the understanding is that, like, if I say qatalahu, that means he killed him. There's only one active person over there. There's the one doing the killing, and there's the other one that's doing nothing. He's just being killed. Whereas in qatala, I may say qatalahu, qatalahu, which means he fought him. Now, the active person, the person that I'm speaking about, yes, he's actively fighting against the other person. But just by my verb form that I'm using, it almost implies that the other person was reciprocating.
Okay, shukran, Mulana.
So Maulana would that then mean and fight for the sake of Allah, fight each other, or fight for the sake of Allah?
No, where was this be now? وَجَاهِدُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Yes, that will be fight in the path of Allah.
Now,
Okay. Well, obviously, this is a snippet of a verse, right? So you have to read that in context. The verse is وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. Fight in the path of Allah those who fight you, but do not transgress. Do not go beyond the limits. Do not go beyond the limits. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Allah does not love those who transgress. So the thrust of the verse is actually Allah telling you, yes, be assertive, stand your ground, but don't do anything more than what is necessary. So I mean, all of the snippets of verses, they have context to them. Right, okay, let's look at the next part. This is one of the most common abwab. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes, Maulana.
Okay, so this fourth bab over here is one of the most common abwab. We find it all over the place. And it's one that's easy to confuse because if you look at the second column, the al-fi'l al-mudari' column, it looks very much like the first bab. The only difference is the harakat. The only difference is the harakat. So I want you to say the scale with me, and then we'll look at some of its qualities after that. But this bab, I want you to pay extra attention to because this one is really common and it's the one that people often confuse. The first bab is hard to confuse, or the first column is hard to confuse. The second one is very easy to confuse. So let's look at it. The standard verb is af'ala. Af'ala. So what's extra over there? If I just point it out to you.
Sukun.
Even more obvious than the sukun. What's
Isn't
the
it the
extra
alif?
letter? Where's the ziyada?
Alif.
Hamza.
Right. And this one, we don't call this one an alif, this is a hamza. Right? It's a hamza. And we call this one, in fact, we call this one a hamzatul qata'. This is like a hamzatul asl. This is a hamza that you always pronounce. It's not one that you can read through. Like in the word ism. Like I can say, instead of saying, I can just say the word bismi. I can read through that hamza. Right? Or, yeah. I can read right through that. This one you can't read through. This is a hamzatul asl. You have to pronounce it. It's a letter in and of its own. In and of itself, right? It has its own sound. That's what is the most distinct feature of this fourth bab. It starts with that hamzatul asl. Ah. And then, you know, the rest of it just follows on from there. So the first word is af'ala. Af'ala. I want you to say the scale with me. You can read from the screen. أفعل يفعل يفعل إفعالا مفعل مفعل أفعل لا تفعل. I'm going to say it again. أفعل يفعل إفعالا مفعل مفعل أفعل لا تفعل. One more time. أفعل يفعل إفعالا مفعل مفعل أفعل لا تفعل. Any questions on that? So yeah, again, there's only one master.
Sorry, Manana. So, for example, if we take the Ma'ali verb and we go down the scale then, so it's fa'ala, fa'alu, that we af'ala, af'alu, like that?
Yes, that's exactly how it will be. It will be
Okay, very good.
أفعل أفعلوا أفعلت أفعلنا أفعلت أفعلتم أفعلت أفعلتن أفعلت أفعلنا. You might get confused there and think that it's like already saying that أفعل, you're thinking of that hamza at the beginning to indicate I. That hamza at the beginning got nothing to do with I. Like in the present tense, يفعل, and if you go down the scale, يفعل يفعلون تفعل يفعلن تفعل تفعلون تفعلين تفعلن أفعل. So أفعل and أفعل sound very similar. What's the only difference?
The harakat.
أفعل أفعل.
Yeah, the harakat at the end, right? أفعل.
The one, there's only one haraka difference. There's only one haraka difference. The one ends with a fatha, and that's this fourth bab, and the first bab ends with a dhamma. But that's present tense. This here is the past tense, has that hamza in it. And then also, if you go down the present tense scale, it will also sound very similar. It may even sound similar to the majhul scale that you learned before. But how would it sound? يفعل يفعلون تفعل يفعلن تفعل تفعلون تفعلين تفعلن أفعل نفعل. So أفعل sounds a bit more different than أفعل. أفعل أفعل. There it starts. This one will start with a U, as opposed to the first verb which starts with a ah.
Maulana, Maaf, how would you give the English meanings to af'ala yuf'ilu, please?
Um, Look, we actually just use that as a we actually just use that as a template, but it will mean to cause to do, most likely, to cause someone to do something else.
Shukran.
I'm just gonna check the exact meaning in the dictionary for you. So if you look here, we have fa'ala over here. If we go down to the Roman numeral 4, well, we don't actually find it here. It's not really used. But like theoretically, if you wanted to form it, it would mean to like to cause. Because what are the qualities of this verb? Again, the most common quality of this verb is causality, like the second verb, causation. And it will either be causation or it will have a new meaning. But this one is very, very commonly used for causation. Like we can look at that we'll find that in the meanings of anzala, arsala, not so much aslama, ahsana, anfaqa, not so much over the ashraka. You find that meaning of causation in all of them. And we can look at that further next week, inshallah. But for now, what I want you to do is do that worksheet of the Arabic in the Quran, or the Mazid Fi in the Quran for form 3 or Bab 3, and then just learn Bab 4 for me. أفعل يفعل إفعالا مفعل مفعل أفعل لا تفعل. And don't forget to learn to revise all of the scales. All that you need to do with these scales, because all of them stay exactly the same. All of them stay exactly the same. No matter what root letters you put on the scale, the harakat stay the same. The masdar stays the same. How you form the mudari stays the same. How you form the ismul fa'il, the ismul maf'ul, all of that stays the same. Right? So what you really need to do is you need to get your tongue used to saying the scale. فعل يفعل تفعيلا مفعل مفعل فعل لا تفعل. فاعل يفاعل فعالا مفاعلة مفاعل مفاعل فاعل لا تفاعل. أفعل يفعل إفعالا مفعل مفعل أفعل لا تفعل. You just need to get your tongue used to saying it, right? And then you need to identify, you need to allow you or train your mind to identify the differences. So that's a very simple thing. Okay, there's a shadda on the second root letter. There's a fatha before the second root letter. There's a hamza at the beginning of the word. Or it starts with a dhamma, yuf'ilu. Alhamdulillah. That's what you need to essentially focus on when going through this mazid fi. What's that? Making your tongue accustomed to saying the scales, to then to recognize the differences uh, that exist with the normal bab, with the first bab. Right? And if you do that, inshallah, this mazid fi will be a breeze. Some people they become overwhelmed by it. They think, oh, there's 10 babs, so much, and how am I going to identify? How am I quickly going to know which word a bab is on? But if you accustom yourself to actually saying these scales, and your tongue or your mind is easily able to identify when it hears a word like akrama, akrama. Which bab is that? And I know that's from the fourth bab. If you hear a word like what word can I put, absara, immediately you know it's from the fourth bab. Just, and all that I needed to identify that was, I didn't have, I just needed to hear that hamza. It might not be like definitive. So when I hear the hamza, it's necessarily on the fourth bab, but I just, my instinct tells me that I'm thinking about the fourth bab. If I come across a word like bashara, my mind is already on the third bab. It has a meaning of a connotation of mutuality. Just because I heard that, I'm not even thinking of alif, I'm just hearing the long sound, bashara, fa'ala. So say the scales repeatedly. Don't think to yourself, okay, I know that scale now, forget it, I'm on to the next one. No, say the scales repeatedly. It's that repetition that that makes your understanding almost intuitive, instinctive. So repeat these scales often, right? And just keep your ear peaked for the difference in the sound between the babs. So for homework, Al-Mazid Fi from the Quran, Form 3, and you can do this page from Al-Mazid Fi. The standard Al-Mazid Fi tables PDF, you can do Form 4. Just fill in the scales over here. Anzala yunzilu inzalan munzilun munzalun anzil la tunzil. I think we can go over that next week with Allah Ta'ala. Is that fine?
Maulana, just
Yes.
one more thing, Maulana. You gave a very good example with where we can get confused, where students often get confused. So is there anything that you can, get together where we make these kind of mistakes? What we would be confused with and what we must look out for? Because that example that you made was very good. It immediately highlighted me how the differences are. You understand, and not fall in that trap.
Okay. Let's leave that for next week, inshallah. Our time is up now. I need to moving to the other class. Let's leave that next week in ta'ala.
Okay.
And
Maulana,
I don't want to overwhelm you with too much like things that will confuse you just now. That confuses you. So inshallah, we'll do that next week.
okay.
Yes.
Quick question. I know I'm going to confuse it. We say af'ala. Will there ever be a af'ila and a af'ula?
No.
You know, never.
No.
Okay. Because I'm already confused when I do riba, daraba, you know, I'm learning that and I'm doing this and I say, okay, when will it be a ila and a ula, af'ula,
So for these different forms, from form 2, form 3, form 4, all of the other forms that we're going to learn, right? It stays the same. Exactly like the template af'ala or fa'ala. It will never become fa'ila or fa'ila. No, it stays fa'ala, fa'ala, af'ala. It will always stay like that. No matter what root letters you put on there, it's going to stay like that.
Shukran, Maulana.
The second root letters, haraka changing, only applies to the first bab.
Okay.
Right? So from that perspective, these other forms are actually a little bit easier. You might just learn that one template and everything fits exactly onto that template. The harakat stay the same, everything. Where the extra letters are stay the same. You just replace the root letters, nothing else. All right, we end there for now. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is the other, the next teacher here?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is host. I'm going to be off now, inshallah.